Dr. Imaja Jubilee.
Let's spread a little love all over this land. Let's spread a little love through our hearts and hands. With love rising like the morning sun, we'll spread love till the day is done. All right then. Let's spread. I, Ann Dolores Brown, my birth given name, started my early education in Charlotte County, Virginia, in Sachs, Virginia, attending two-room brick school called Galilee School during segregation, during Jim Crow. It was two rooms. We had an outdoor toilet, we had an outdoor pump, we had a playground, but it was very, very limited in what we had. We had a library in there that was maybe 3 to 4 feet tall with raggedy books in it and everything. I had a teacher, Miss Nana P. Morton, and Miss Murray F. Dupee were my teachers. And every day, one of the things that stands out in my mind when I first started school was we had to say our chores. We had to say my fingernails are clean, I brushed my teeth, my hair has been combed, and I have on clean underwear, okay? We had to do that every day. Then we had to raise our hand and say Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, all right? And then as the day progressed on, they gave us book to read. Some of the books that I first read was Fun with Dick and Jane, all right? And with Fun and Dick and Jane, it was all white people. There was blonde hair. There were no black people in the books. There were no black images in the book. And we read out of those books all through the first through the fourth grade. And then one of the first black books that I got introduced to was called Little Sambo. And that book, when I think about it now, it just kind of turns me off. What they did was built new schools, and I went to Bacon District Elementary School, which was still in Sachs, and that school is still operating right now. And I ended up graduating in the first graduating class. It was not an integrated school, it was segregated. I ended up graduating from there from the 7th grade. And then I went to Central High School in Charlotte Courthouse, Virginia, which was still segregated. I graduated from there in 1965. That class was all black. I was in the drama club, okay? I was played on the basketball team, which I really love basketball. And then I was in the National Honor Society because my grades were so good. But I did graduate at the top of my class, okay? I think I might have been number 3. And that's why Miss Irma Blackwell, who was superintendent of the black schools, said, okay, you're going to apply to Longwood because your grades are so good and you can go over there and do that. Well, Miss Ella Jeffers helped me fill out the papers, Miss Irma Blackwell, and we sent the grades into Longwood. It was a whole lot of paperwork, and I'm not remembering the real details, but I know that Miss Ella Jeffers helped me fill it out. And we sent it in, and I also applied to Virginia Union University in Richmond, Virginia. So what happened was, here I am, I didn't quite understand why Miss Blackwell, what she was doing then, but she felt I had the caliber of brilliance and intelligence that I could go to one of these schools that really stood out in this area, which was Longwood College. When we got the letter back and it said I wasn't accepted, and okay, being a black and doing Jim Crow times, I didn't really see the significance of all of what was happening because I was only like 16, 17 years old. But Miss Blackwell was upset. She was very, very upset. She said, I'm going to find out what's going on with this. Okay. And she said, get in the car. I got in her car, and we came over here to Longwood. She put me out in the area, like where the rotunda is. I was seated out there from the registrar's office. And I saw all these white students going by. They were looking at me. And the look on their face was, like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? But I sat there patiently and I waited. And when Miss Blackwell came out storming out the doors, and she said to me, you did not get accepted, quote, because you were colored. that left a scar. And I'm saying, well, what's wrong with me? I'm smart and I'm brilliant. And I got in the car, I was crying because I just was so caught all up in being black, what it said Negroes during that time, and the other N word was repeated. I didn't understand. Is there something wrong with me as a person? You know, I live and I breathe and I'm smart and I'm intelligent, and they turned me down. Well, that left a scar. It left a scar that I carried for over 50 years. I went to Virginia Union University. And at Virginia Union University, it was all so new to me because being raised in Saxe, Virginia, which is very bucolic, very rural, as they say, and I had not had a lot of exposure to being around other people other than homecomings at the church and revivals, and it was just a kind of closed circuit. But when I got to Virginia Union, I really had a hard time adjusting. I went to Virginia Union for a year, and then I ended up getting married. My education stopped at that point, if you want to call it, in the system, in the educational system, whether college, and it stopped right there for a long, long time. So what did I do? I enrolled in nursing school at John Tyler Community College, and I started working on my nursing degree. And the nursing, it was different, but it just didn't fit me. I went to nursing school for probably maybe a year. I was married, and I ended up getting a divorce. I worked at St. Mary's Hospital as my training to be a nurse. But the nursing was draining. It was draining because I had to be giving over here and giving over there. And so I ended up getting a divorce. And then I went on for a number of years without having finished my education. And then I had a daughter, which is Cosette Ducharme, and it dawned on me I wanted to get my degree. But what happened was I thought about it because I wasn't furthering myself without having that degree. And so how was I going to go back to school, not having money to go back to school with? And then I learned about Pell Grants, and I learned about loans to go back to school. So what did I do? Another girlfriend, she was living in Red Oak, Virginia. She wanted to go back to school too. So I told my mom that I wanted to go back to school. And my mom said, you didn't go when we was paying for it. How you going to pay for it now? And we applied, the other friend and I applied to Virginia Commonwealth University. I couldn't go and stay on campus or anything. So my girlfriend said, well, we're going to drive every day. We drove 2 hours every single day because both of us was determined to finish school. And we drove to Richmond every single day. I was determined that, I paid for gas, she had the car. We drove and we had 8 o'clock classes. Drove every single day for a whole year. We did that. Both of us was determined. And then, after, I was doing really good. And then I saw where I still needed to have another year. So I needed to have some money. So what happened was I started working, because when I come home every day, my mother would have my child, she'd have the meal, she'd have all of that stuff ready. I worked for my daddy, Reverend John Henry Brown, had pulpwood and logging business. So I did all of his bookkeeping, made all of his payroll out, and he paid me a salary. So that gave me some extra money. Plus, I had my own, I had a car. And so I did that on the weekends. But after a year, it got to be tiring. So what am I going to do now? I want to go back. How am I going to do this? So, in the way that the universe works, I believe when you put something out there and you determine, you got to have tenacity, determination, and a vision. And I saw myself being handed my degree from VCU. I was determined. Yeah, I didn't finish over here and I didn't finish there, but because I held the vision. And then what happened was one of my sister's friends had a house in Richmond. It was only a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, small house. And Mr. and Mrs. Al White, they rented that house to me for $75 a month. And I got a place to stay because I had to go on Richmond City Welfare Assistance, and I tell it like it is, because I wouldn't have been able to do it. They paid for me to put Deshawn in a nursery every day. They gave me food stamps so that I could feed Deshawn and myself. And with the money that I got on the weekend, I was able to pay the rent and able to buy whatever else that I needed. And I finished my year at VCU. Oh, that was such an amazing experience. But I said all that to say that I never stopped holding the vision. And when they had the graduation, and I had to walk across that stage, and they handed my degree to me, and my mother was in the audience, holding my daughter and my father, and I came down off the stage. I said, Mama, you said I wasn't going to do it. I did it. Here's my degree, okay? So I had my undergraduate degree in Richmond in rehabilitative services that I got from VCU. But I still had debt. I had debt to pay off because the Peel Grant gave you so much. But I did manage later on to pay that debt. But I got my degree, and that vision I held of walking across the stage, I've learned so much through that process not to give up, because there were setbacks all along the way. And focusing on and asking the universe. I believe in asking the universe, what purpose am I to serve and how I'm going to get there. And when I put that out there, when I wait, it always unfolds. The money, even though I had the debt and all of that, and my daughter, I managed. I don't like the word survive. Survive, when you mention the word survivor, to me, it says like a victim. I am not a victim. I am not a victim of any of the circumstances that I've been through in trying to get my education. I am not a victim. I am victorious. I am triumphantly embracing the fact that I came through all that. And then the scars that were left from that education were tied, I didn't deal with for a long time.